Hey folks, Colin here from Sumthins Recording, and today I'm going to show you the 3 magic frequencies for mixing snare drum. We're going to be talking about mixing snare drum today, but before we dive in, if you are ready to go a little bit deeper into the mixing process in its entirety and really start to hone your workflow as an engineer, then I have just the thing for you. It is my 7-step mixing checklist, and it's just a simple PDF that will walk you through the entire mixing process step by step to help you get professional and radio ready mixes without any more of the hassle and without any more of the guesswork. It is a completely free guide, and you can download it below using the link in the video description. Now let's jump in here and talk about the 3 magic frequencies for snare drum. The first frequency we're going to look at is going to be the 5 to 10K range, and specifically 8K. So I'm going to give you ranges and specific frequencies as well, because sometimes it can vary, but a lot of times there's these 3 frequencies that I go to. Let me start here by at least playing you what the drums sound like, and then I'll solo up just the snare drum. You can hear what the snare drum sounds like by itself as well. Let me make sure the limiter's here on so you can hear everything. And here we go. So here's the finished drum mix for this song. So you can hear our snare drum has a lot of nice air to it. It has room to breathe up on the top end. It has a lot of nice mid-range bite, so it can cut through the mix, and you can hear that crack of the stick hitting the snare drum, especially in a rock mix like this. You want to hear that stick attack in that kind of mid-range area, and then it has a lot of nice beef down below to make it feel big and make it feel powerful inside the mix. Let's get rid of this tambourine here as well. So let's open up here. The first frequency range we're going to be talking about here is this one here. So between 5 and 10K, but specifically 8K here. You can see I'm boosting a ton of 8K on this snare drum. It was pretty dark and pretty dull up on the top end. So we're boosting up 13.5 dB here to get that air and to get that nice sizzle on the top end. This frequency range right here really lets you hear the bottom snares on a drum, and especially if you don't have 2 mics on the snare drum. You can see we just have a snare mic, which is just our snare top mic. There's no snare bottom mic, so we need to push a little bit more of this frequency range here to get that snare bottom, to get that sizzle, and to give the drum some air on the top end. So let me start. I'll play you the drum again, and I'm going to take this boost out, and you can hear what our snare drum turns into, and then I will kick it back in. You can hear the air and the life that comes back into our snare drum. Take a listen here. Surprisingly, one sounds more natural than the other, and it is the one with the ridiculous 13.5 dB boost. That sounds more natural. It sounds more like a snare drum without this crazy 13.5 dB boost in at 8K. It actually sounds like we're rolling off top end on the snare drum, and that's not what you want, especially when you put this in even in the rest of the drums, without that top end boost in there, without that air, without that sizzle from the bottom snares. It doesn't sit right in the drums, and it definitely won't sit right in the rest of the kit. So let me pull this all the way back down, and I'm going to slowly boost this 8K move up to our 13.5 dB here, so you can hear what it adds to our mix as we bring it up on our snare here. So take a listen. We'll pull it all the way down here and start there. And if you notice by looking even at our frequency curve here, at our spectrum, you can see how bringing up this move here evens out our top end. You can see how it starts with being a little bit rolled off, and then we kick it in. It starts to flatten out a little bit, and it keeps our snare drum even all the way across the top end there. That is our first frequency that is pretty magic on snare drum. You can see that's pretty night and day difference there. Our second one is this one here, this kind of light green or turquoise dot here. That is the 3K area. So this is going to be another range, and I'll give you another specific frequency too. So anywhere between 2K and 5K, this is where you're going to get the crack and bring out the stick attack on your snare drum. Between 2 and 5K, or usually for me, it's around the 3K area. You can see we're at 2.89K, pretty close to 3K there. That's usually where I'm sitting when I'm trying to find the stick attack on the snare drum. This is something you will find from the snare top. That's why we're only doing about 3 dB boost here. We don't need that much because we're getting it from our snare top mic there, pointing right at the center dot on our snare drum. We'll start again. I will take this boost out. I'll kick it back in. Listen to how the attack changes on our drum. Listen to how the crack changes as the stick hits the drum here. Without this boost in, it feels like there's a big part of the snare drum missing. It feels really scoop sounding, like we just have the low end weight and then we have some air at the top, but we're missing that mid range or that high mid crack that makes the snare drum feel powerful and that allows it to cut through a denser mix. If you got guitars, you got keyboards going, especially lead vocal, this frequency range here, this 2 to 5K or this 3K boost like that helps your snare drum be competitive with the instruments as well as sit really nicely with your vocal. You usually want, in a rock mix, you want your vocal and your snare drum kind of sitting with each other. You want them working together, being those prime spots in the middle of the mix, as well as with the kick drum there in the drum kit. So that's that move there. And then our third one is after our compressor here, I have one more EQ and we're boosting up the low end area. So this is where we're bringing in the beef for our snare drum. We got 3 moves we're doing here, 3 frequency ranges we're talking about. First one's giving us our air and that kind of crispiness, that sizzle on the top of our snare drum. Second one's giving us that mid-range crack, emphasizing the stick attack on our snare drum. And the third one's giving us that beef and that low-end weight and power that we want from our snare drum. Now for me, this is usually sitting around the 200 area, but I like to air a little bit lower than 200. That way our slope here, I like to have a gentler return, and I don't like it to reach too far up towards like 300 or 400 there, because then we start bringing up some low mid butt. So I like to pull this down a little bit further towards 150, so it'll bring up that 200 weight, and it will reach down a little bit lower here with this gentle return on the low end side, and it'll bring up some of that lower octaves, which also helps your snare drum feel a little bit bigger. So take a listen here. I'll take this boost out and I'll kick it back in. Listen to the weight and the power that we lose without this boost in there, and then hear how it comes back in. Our snare drum feels quite a bit beefier with just this 2.8 dB boost at 159 hertz here. Hear how much more well-rounded our snare drum sounds when we kick this boost in. It's just a little over 2 dB boost here, but it does so much for our snare drum to help it feel balanced across the frequency range and to help it feel big and powerful. Without this boost in, we can have all the attack we want, we can have all the air we want on our snare drum, but it won't feel powerful and it won't feel big because it doesn't have the weight to compete, especially sitting next to our kick drum. Our kick drum brings a lot of weight to the party. It's a very important part of our drum sound. Our snare drum has to have enough weight to feel powerful, otherwise it won't be competitive with our kick drum here. One more time here, let's go through all 3. We've got our top end boost. So our first frequency is 8K, or if you're looking for a range, we're going to be between 5K and 10K. That's going to bring up the air on your snare drum, and that's going to give you that top end sizzle to help your snare bottoms feel present in the mix. Our second one here, our second frequency, for me it's usually 3K or anywhere between 2K and 5K. Bringing that up is going to give you that nice crack on your snare drum, and it's going to help to emphasize the stick attack on the top of the snare. That's going to help your snare cut through the mix. And then our third frequency is around the 200 hertz area. That's going to be where your fundamental of your snare drum is, unless you have it tuned quite a bit lower to make it feel heavier. But you want to look for the fundamental. So for me, it's anywhere between 100 and 200. And I like to boost in that range to bring up some of that lower octave, as well as reach up towards the fundamental there. That's going to give your snare that beef and that low end weight to help it be competitive in your mix. One more time here, and I will A-B everything on our snare drum. You can hear what these two EQs do for our snare drum. We'll start with, and I will take them off. Those are 3 magic frequencies you can take in while you're doing your next mix to really beef up your snare drum and enhance it overall. I hope that was helpful for you. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you are ready to take your mixes to the next level and really start dialing in your workflow as an engineer, then I have just the tool for you, and it is completely free. It is my 7-step mixing checklist, and you can download it below to start creating more professional mixes in less time. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.